Incident number 1. On April 14, 2016, a school group from Salt Lake City traveled to Utah's Red Canyon for a routine nature study, but 15-year-old Ethan Morales wandered slightly away from his classmates. Ethan was fascinated by a narrow sandstone crack that created eerie echoes, and he leaned closer, unaware of how unstable the ground beneath him really was. The surface suddenly crumbled under his shoes, sending Ethan sliding feet-first into the vertical crevice. He screamed for help as his arms scraped against the canyon walls, but the gap was too tight for him to brace himself. Within moments, Ethan dropped nearly 40 feet into a dark sandstone pocket where no one could see or hear him clearly. At first, his classmates assumed he had gone ahead with another group, but panic began to rise when Ethan didn't respond during roll call. Teachers retraced their steps and finally noticed the disturbed gravel and Ethan's water bottle lying near the crevice. Search teams arrived quickly, but the crevice was barely wide enough for a single adult to fit. Rescuers had to use special airbags to try widening the crack, but every push risked collapsing another fragile section. A rope was finally lowered into the pit, but Ethan had fallen in such an awkward, twisted position that he couldn't grab it. Rescuers took turns descending into the claustrophobic shaft, scraping their own shoulders just trying to reach him. Hours passed, and temperatures inside the sandstone pocket dropped, making the situation even more dangerous. When a rescuer finally reached him, it became clear Ethan had been severely injured by the initial fall. The agony deepened when teams realized they couldn't pull him out without risking a full rock collapse. Despite every attempt, the canyon's tight geometry trapped Ethan beyond extraction, leaving the rescue teams devastated. Authorities eventually sealed the unstable crack for safety, turning the site into a quiet memorial spot for Ethan. Ethan's family received the heartbreaking news that the canyon's natural structure had made a safe rescue impossible. To this day, the tragedy of April 14, 2016 remains a reminder of how quickly an innocent school trip in the United States can turn into an unimaginable nightmare. Incident 2. On February 9, 2018, an Irish school group visiting Iceland hiked across the Sólheimajökull Glacier, unaware of how unstable the ice had become that week. 16-year-old Liam O'Donnell wandered a little closer to a bluish fissure, mesmerized by how deep and glowing the ice appeared. His friends warned him to step back, but the icy ledge beneath his boot suddenly groaned and split in half. Before he could react, the entire sheet collapsed, and Liam plunged straight into a narrow crevasse hidden beneath fresh snow. The crevasse walls scraped against him as he slid nearly 40 meters down, bouncing from side to side in total darkness. His classmates screamed for the adult guides, who rushed toward the hole but couldn't see anything except a black void. The guides tied ropes and shouted Liam's name, but the crevasse was so deep that their voices barely echoed back. Rescue teams from Reykjavik arrived with thermal cameras, but the freezing air made readings nearly impossible. One rescuer attempted to descend, squeezing through the narrow gap while ice shards rained down from above. The deeper he climbed, the tighter the space became, forcing him to turn sideways just to fit. Finally, a faint glimpse of Liam's red jacket appeared, wedged between two icy ridges far below. When they reached him, he was trapped in a near-vertical position, unable to move his legs or arms. The cold inside the crevasse was brutal, dropping far below freezing and making survival nearly impossible. Rescuers attempted to warm the space with heated air hoses, but the ice began cracking dangerously around them. Fearing a full collapse, the rescue team had to pull out, leaving Liam wedged deep within the glacier. Local authorities determined the crevasse was too unstable for further entry and sealed most of the opening for safety. Liam's family, who had flown to Iceland overnight, were devastated when they learned the glacier's depth made recovery impossible. The tragedy of February 9, 2018 became one of Iceland's most haunting school trip disasters, remembered for the sheer helplessness of the rescue. Incident number 3. On June 22, 2019, students from Brighton High School traveled to the cliffs of Cornwall for a geography field trip, excited to explore the rugged coastline. 14-year-old Sophie Caldwell lingered behind her group, captivated by the crashing waves far below. Without warning, the cliff's loose soil gave way beneath her, sending her sliding toward a jagged outcrop. Her classmates screamed and rushed forward, but Sophie was already halfway down the steep incline. She tried grabbing tufts of grass, but the ground was unstable, and her hands kept slipping on the wet soil. The drop was longer than anyone realized, nearly 20 meters of exposed cliffside, leaving her utterly vulnerable. Teachers quickly tried to lower ropes, but the narrow slope made it almost impossible to secure a safe descent. Sophie's cries echoed, carried away by the sea breeze, making it difficult for rescuers to pinpoint her exact location. Her backpack caught briefly on a protruding rock, giving a fleeting moment of pause before she slipped further. Parents watching from the parking area arrived too late, seeing only the frantic teachers above. Rescue teams arrived with harnesses and ropes, but every attempt to reach Sophie risked dislodging more soil. She clung desperately to a thin ledge, her white uniform stained with dirt and scraped by rocks. A sudden gust of wind caught her, and Sophie tumbled into a narrow crevice, leaving rescuers powerless to intervene. The cliffside was too fragile for anyone to climb down safely, forcing the team to watch helplessly. By the time emergency teams stabilized the area, Sophie was already trapped in a narrow, inaccessible portion of the cliff. Authorities cordoned off the area for safety, turning the site into a somber memorial for the fallen student. Sophie's family received the tragic news, unable to accept how quickly a day of learning had turned deadly. The coastal cliff tragedy remains a chilling reminder in the United Kingdom of how fragile life can be during seemingly safe school excursions. Incident number 4. On March 18, 2020, students from São Paulo Secondary School embarked on a school trip to the Amazon, eager to explore the rainforest and its winding rivers. 15-year-old Lucas Ferreira was fascinated by the flowing river, wandering slightly ahead of the group to watch the water swirl around exposed roots. Without warning, the muddy riverbank gave way beneath his feet, plunging him into the swift current. His classmates screamed and ran toward him, but the river's strength carried Lucas away faster than anyone could react. The water was murky and filled with debris, branches, and floating leaves that knocked against him as he struggled to stay afloat. Teachers tried to throw lifelines, but the ropes tangled on tree roots and sharp rocks along the bank. Lucas attempted to grab onto a fallen log, but the river's current twisted it violently, leaving him clinging for dear life. Nearby students shouted instructions, but the roaring water drowned out all voices. Suddenly, a submerged branch struck him, knocking him under for a terrifying moment. He surfaced briefly, coughing and gasping, only to be swept further into a narrow channel lined with sharp rocks. The guide attempted to jump in, but the river's force was too great, forcing him back to the bank. Other students clung to trees and roots, watching in horror as Lucas disappeared into a bend in the river. Rescue teams arrived hours later, but the river's depth and murkiness prevented immediate recovery. Lucas' life jacket had twisted around him, limiting his mobility and keeping him trapped against the fast-moving current. By evening, the river slowed, leaving debris scattered along the shore, but there was no sign of Lucas. Authorities confirmed he had drowned, becoming one of the deadliest school trip accidents in the Amazon region. Lucas' classmates were left traumatized, realizing how quickly adventure turned into horror. The Jungle River drowning became a chilling story shared across Brazilian schools as a grim warning about the dangers of rushing nature trips. Incident number 5. On February 14, 2017, students from Zurich International School boarded a cable car in the Swiss Alps, excited for a winter field trip to study glaciers. Elena Mahler, age 16, clutched her backpack tightly as the cable car began ascending the steep slope. The ride was smooth at first, with panoramic views of icy peaks and glittering snowfields stretching for miles. Suddenly, the cable above shuddered violently, and the car jolted, causing students to scream and lose their balance. Elena tried to grab the railing, but the sudden jerk threw her against the wall, knocking her to the floor. The cable snapped with a deafening metallic roar, leaving the car dangling precariously over a 200-meter drop. Students clung to the walls and ceiling, wide-eyed and screaming, as the car swung violently in the icy wind. Teachers attempted to calm them, shouting instructions over the roaring wind and the groaning metal of the cable. One side of the car tore open slightly, and snow whipped inside, coating the students in ice-cold powder. Elena's hands froze as she gripped a support bar, her white uniform streaked with dirt and snow. The metal cable twisted again, and the car swung toward a jagged rock outcropping, scraping and screeching against it. Screams echoed through the Alps, but no one could reach them in time. Helicopters were grounded by high winds. Minutes stretched like hours as the car teetered, and Elena realized there was no way out until help arrived. A final violent swing threw students against each other, causing injuries and panic to escalate uncontrollably. Suddenly, the cable snapped completely, sending the car plunging down the icy slope with horrifying speed. Elena and 10 other students were trapped inside as the car crashed against rocks at the bottom. Emergency crews reached the site hours later, finding the scene catastrophic, with snow and debris scattered everywhere. The mountain cable car collapse became a tragic reminder in Switzerland of how fragile life can be during school adventures. Incident number 6. On April 10, 2021, students from Dubai International School arrived at the Rub Al Khali Desert for a geography field trip, excited to experience the vast dunes. 13-year-old Ahmed Al-Mansouri ran ahead to photograph the rippling dunes with his small camera. The morning sun was warm, and the desert appeared calm, with only gentle winds moving the sand. Suddenly, dark clouds rose on the horizon, and a massive sandstorm began rolling in, faster than anyone expected. Ahmed tried running back to the group, but the wind blew with incredible force, making each step nearly impossible. Sand stung their faces and got into eyes and mouths, making it difficult to breathe or see more than a few meters. Teachers shouted for everyone to hold hands and stay together, but Ahmed had been separated in the chaos. The dunes shifted under the strong wind, and Ahmed stumbled into a small ravine, disoriented and terrified. He tried to climb out, but the soft sand kept collapsing beneath his hands and feet. The sandstorm grew denser, turning day into darkness and leaving Ahmed invisible to his classmates and teachers. Other students huddled together, calling out his name, but their voices were drowned out by the roaring wind. Exhausted and blinded by sand, Ahmed sank further into the shifting ravine, gasping for air. The teachers attempted to dig him out, but the sand kept collapsing, making it impossible to reach him in time. By the afternoon, the storm had subsided, revealing the harsh reality of the desert landscape. Ahmed had been overcome by exhaustion and suffocated beneath the sand in the ravine. Rescuers arrived hours later, carefully recovering his body from the unforgiving desert. The desert sandstorm tragedy left students and teachers traumatized, realizing how unpredictable nature could be. Ahmed's death became a cautionary tale across the UAE, a haunting reminder that even routine school trips can turn fatal.